Okay. Well, yeah, thanks, guys. Thank you for joining. And we're talking about time management in professional services. I have a few slides that I'll get through quite quickly. And these are really ideas that hopefully will get your thinking, get your brains moving on this topic. And then I'd love to hear your ideas when I've got through the slides and we can have a discussion and some questions and so on. The idea is that if we can manage our time better in our busy work, we can be more productive. We can do the right things, the most effective things in our businesses. We can grow revenue, grow profit, and we can have more fun. That's what we are trying to accomplish today. A very quick word. I am originally an attorney, admitted to practice in South Africa, and I practiced in a commercial firm there. But early on in my career, I moved to Tokyo, Japan. I spent 18 years in Japan, and I got into business as an entrepreneur. I founded or co-founded some businesses in software, IT, market research. I got to work with some very big clients, Unilever, Procter & Gamble, Citibank, Glaxo, and so on. And I sold businesses to listed acquirers. And about 12 years ago, I moved to Australia, which is where I am now. And I acquired this business called Panalitix, which does some coaching and has some tools for professional services. So I'm happy to get more into that, but that's my quick background. Okay. So what's the challenge? Why are we talking about this? Why is this important? Let's think about time management in professional services and why it's a challenge. Well, the first thing is all of you on this call have knowledge, you have experience, you have wisdom, you have ideas, you have the ability to advise your clients. And that's basically in professional services what we share or what we sell. That's what we provide to our clients. But the thing is, it takes time to do that. It's difficult for us to get our knowledge across without spending time. We didn't build a widget or a piece of software or a product that we sell. We need to use our time. And time, of course, is a scarce resource. Everyone on this call has 24 hours in their day, 7 days a week, and we don't get more than that, no matter what we do. So it's a scarce resource. And when we're in business and we feel that there is too much to do or we don't have enough time, we start to get behind, and that's not a fun part of business. Some of you not only are selling, by the way, your amazing skills and experience, but you're also running a business. You're hiring people, you're managing people, you're doing your own internal accounting, you are planning, you are strategizing, you're developing services, you're dealing with clients outside your services and so on. So there's lots to do. And it's not fun when there's a constant feeling of, I'm behind. How am I going to catch up? That's not the kind of feeling that we really enjoy typically. So the thing I want to talk about today is really mindset. It's the way we can adjust how we think about things, which might ease the approach we have to time management. So that's really the theme of today. So please think about that as we go through this, the mindset you have on this topic. I'm going to suggest to you there are 3 ways we can get better on our pathway to improved time management, right? There are 3 things. And the first is how we organize our businesses, our firms, structure, organizational structure, and so on. The second is how we communicate internally, because unless you are completely on your own, you're going to need to communicate not just with your clients, but also with your team members and so on. The one that I want to focus on today is how we approach work. And if we had 5 hours to do this or a day, I would go through topics like goal setting, knowing the destination for your business. What do you want to do in terms of growth and service offering and clients and so on? I would talk about the KPIs you track, what matters in your business, the metrics. I would talk about organizational charts and design. job descriptions, checklists, procedures, systems, methodologies, how you delegate your work. These are all themes which help us to organize a little better. And I would talk about what we all have to do, what we're doing right now. We're meeting. You'll meet with your clients, you'll meet internally. How do we make time efficient there? And many of you are using email. Email continues to be a major source of communication in business, and it will be for a long time to come, I feel. Of course, there's other ways to do it, but email is a way that we spend a lot of time. And then what are the rules for communication, the protocols or the ways in which you communicate? Now, I'm not going to talk about any of those things because there's a lot to talk about on mindset. If anyone ever wants to chat about anything we discussed today, I'm happy to set up some time separately. But here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the mindset or how we approach our work in our business. And I'm going to run through some ideas, some of which might apply to you, some of which may not apply to you. But let's get into this part of the presentation. Some of these ideas are really simple. They're really obvious, but they might help you to improve the way you manage time, which will lead you to a more fun type of business. First one I'm going to run through is called calendar blocking. By the way, all of this comes from a lot of research that we have done, research with clients, research with lawyers, with accountants, and so on in various countries. So if anyone wants more on any of these topics, I have a large body of literature which I can share with you. So first one is calendar blocking. This is so simple, it's amazing. But you know, in all of our calendars, we set aside time to sleep, time to eat, time to travel, time to commute, and so on. And we're left with our available time, which we're able to divide into blocks. That could be a morning session, it could be a before breakfast, after breakfast, over lunch, afternoon session, but there are blocks. They could be as short as 20 minutes or 30 minutes, and they could be as long as 5 or 6 hours. But there are periods there which we can use. And yet we are also facing a lot of tasks that we need to do. In some cases, that's client work. In other cases, it's internal meetings. It might be planning. It might be developing new services. It might be marketing or selling or business development. These are the kinds of things we do in professional services, the tasks. And the very simple idea of calendar blocking is to look ahead at perhaps next week, maybe a little longer than that, and say, where am I going to place these tasks so that I can focus intensely on them at that particular time? Really simple idea. What's the benefit of this? Where we spend a lot of time is constantly making decisions about what to do next. You know, at the end of this call, you're going to go back to your office, you're going to go back to your daily work, and some of you are going to say, what should I do? Maybe I'll check my emails first. Let me see what's come through in my emails. Maybe you're already doing that as we go through this, and you're going to say, should I work on this project? Should I work on that project? Maybe I should go down to my colleague and see what they're doing. You're going to decide later what you're going to do next. And what you will find in the long term is that by having those decisions made for you, because you make them in advance, we can free a lot of time from thinking about that. The other thing that happens when we block our time is you send a message. You send a message to your colleagues that, guys, I'm doing client A's consultative work now for the next hour. Don't come into my office and say, hey, this won't take long. I just had a quick question for you, because it always does take a while and it breaks my concentration and it interrupts me. And this will also build a culture which shows your team that you value your time and you want them to value their time as well, and you're organized with your time. So we see a lot of merit in this really simple idea of planning our time through calendar blocking, okay? This is idea number one. Idea number two, many of you have heard of Parkinson's law. It's another really simple idea. What it says is that the work we do will tend to fill the time that we are given for that work, right? Really simple idea. So if I said to you, I think we have some lawyers here, I need a contract of purchase and sale. Hey, can you get that to me by October? It's quite likely that you won't rush to do that job today. But if I said I really need it in 30 minutes, you can probably get that work done quite efficiently and effectively. And if we take more time to do the same work, that obviously means lower productivity, right? If we're spending more time on the same job. So there are a couple of things which are really important in terms of this principle. Really simple ideas is setting clear deadlines. And just think about the work you have on your plate right now. How much of it is really clearly deadline driven? Sometimes we just leave work until the client starts to chase us, and that's not setting a good enough deadline. And the other thing is setting a period for the work. Is it reasonable that that contract I mentioned is going to take an hour or two or three, or maybe I need 1 hour today and 1 hour in a week from now because I have to do some research, etc. So the two ideas here are getting really clear with all of our tasks, not just our client work, but our internal work as well. Make it deadline driven and then allocate reasonable periods for us to complete that work. And we start to use our time more efficiently. Okay, here's another idea. I really like this one. And this comes from some work done by a guy called Mr. Pink. If anyone knows the game Cluedo, then there is a character called Mr. Pink. It's not that guy. It's a guy called Daniel Pink, and he studied chronotypes. And I don't know how many of you have heard of this, but I thought the research was quite fascinating, and we've applied it with some firms, and it's been quite useful. And basically what this says is every human has an internal clock, a circadian clock that governs how we focus, our creativity, and our moods during the day. So basically our behaviors are very oriented around this internal clock. And it talks about the times in the day where we have troughs and we have peaks. You know, it's I'm in Australia and it's 2 a.m. over here. It doesn't bother me in the slightest because I'm very effective at this time of day, frankly. If you got me after midday at 3 p.m., I'm kind of useless. I'm having a nap. So don't ever call me around then. But everyone has different troughs and peaks in their day. And if we understand the way we behave, we can decide when we do work, what kind of work we should do. And that can lead to better productivity. I won't go through all the research now, but they distinguish between what they call larks. Think of morning people. Think of people like me who are very comfortable being up at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. and doing a lot. Maybe that's you, or maybe that's absolutely not you. Maybe you are more of a what we call a third bird. This is the most common group, the kind of normal people who wake up at a reasonable time, 6, 7, 8. They want to have breakfast. They want to organize themselves. They're happy to commute and get started at 8 or 9 o'clock or so. And they work through till 2 or 3 p.m. where they start to become less productive. And then those people, everyone here, think back to university days. There were those people that were studying. They did nothing during the day. They slept until 11 a.m. and they did nothing until 5 p.m. And they suddenly got serious about their work and started working. And then they were burning the midnight oil, as we say, right, until 2 a.m. These are the owls. Now, what's really interesting about this research, what I found interesting, is that when we are doing analytical work, this might be work that really requires our brain to focus. We're applying a set of rules. We're going through a methodology. Then we are better doing that when we're at our peak, right? This is what we should do when we are, if we're a lark, we do that in the early morning. But interestingly, the creative tasks, so this is where we sit with our colleagues and brainstorm, or we have a discussion, an unstructured discussion. You should tackle this when you're in your trough, right? So that period after lunch when you're a bit sleepy and you had a glass of wine at lunch and you're thinking, wow, it's only 2 o'clock and I'm going home at 5 or 6 o'clock. This is a good time for the creative discussions, interestingly. And this has been studied and researched with many, many respondents. So deciding when you do what kind of work can really influence your productivity. Let me go to the next thing, which is called deep work. And this is a US behavioral psychologist and author his name is Kel Newport, and I've got a lot of his books and so on if you're interested. But he talks of this idea of being in a flow state. What is a flow state? A flow state is that period, and I think everyone knows it when they're in it, but they're completely involved or immersed in their work, in their task. Time is passing without you even noticing. The work feels effortless. You're just getting a lot done. Things are happening incredibly fast and quickly. You're incredibly productive. This is a period that can anyone indicate that they sort of understand what we're talking about here? That period where you're highly productive. Thank you. And so the question is, how do we get into this flow state when we want to? How do we turn it on? Well, this is what the research of Mr. Newport is about. And here are some ideas that he gives us. First of all, there's got to be a commitment to start and complete a task. In other words, especially if I'm an early chronotype, I'm going to spend 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. doing a particular piece of client work. I'm just going to focus on it and I'm going to complete it in that time. This works best where that task is fairly challenging, not easy, because we only get into a flow state when we are challenged and we're using our brain. And there should be a very clear goal, a goal that is easily defined. We don't use something like, yeah, I should do a little bit of study on the new regulations. That's not clear enough. It's got to be, I'm going to complete this very clear bit of work in a certain time frame. Then we remove distractions. You know, his research shows that when we're in a flow state and we are interrupted just for 3 minutes, it takes around 23 minutes to regain our focus. Think about that in your job for a second. Do you have people coming into your office saying, hey, can I just chat for a bit? I've got an idea. And then they break your concentration. It's very difficult to recreate that intensity or that focus quickly. So we need to remove those distractions. Usually we can only maintain this state for about an hour. Maybe it's up to 3 hours, but it's reckless to set too long. You can't do this for too long. 1 hour is ideal. And what might help you to reach this flow state is to create certain habits. That might be the place that you work from. Every time I sit at this seat with this laptop, with this music playing, maybe it's always at 8 a.m. Maybe I have a cup of coffee with me or something. So we create habits which teaches our brain that this is what we're about to do. And I suggest you read Mr. Newport's book on this if you're more interested in that. Okay. Pareto, do we have any Italians in the audience here? I'm just looking through quickly. I'm not sure we do. Mr. Pareto was an Italian, and interestingly, he was an economist, and a lot of his work was around understanding the ownership of land in Italy in the late 1800s. And what he worked out is that roughly 20% of the land is owned by 80% of the people, which means, of course, that the opposite, right? 20% of the land is owned by 80% of the people. 80% of people own 20% of the land. And what that applies in our professional services is that a lot of our effort produces a little bit of results, or conversely, a little bit of our effort produces a great deal of our results. So this helps us to focus on the things which matter, a lot, right? Let's look at some examples in professional services of how we can use this. Some of you, I suspect, you have clients that are consuming a lot of your time, but they are not generating a great deal of your income or your profit, right? Now, even if you're billing on a standard hourly rate, it may be that they're occupying a lot of your administrative time. They're not reputable clients, perhaps. They're not the clients that are going to make referrals, introduce other clients. So they're not as good as these other clients. So if we can spend less of our time with them and spend more of that time, the quality time, the productive time, with the 20%. So this is about shifting where we allocate our time in our client base and being more disciplined and more organized about how we spend time. I'd love to hear your ideas on that. Another thing in professional services I have found is nobody likes complaints, right? Nobody likes an unhappy client. Nobody likes a client that's complaining or doesn't like the bill or wasn't satisfied with your work, etc. But we tend to be hypersensitive to any complaint. In fact, the fact is that some of our, let's call them A-list clients, the ones that are delivering 80% of the value, that's where we need to be hypersensitive, but not overreact. There will always be complaints. Not overreact to those clients that are not necessarily delivering all the value. So we start to think a little bit differently about our work. And of course, if we're doing business development or sales, we really want to focus on the clients who are potentially our A-list clients, the ones that are going to deliver a lot of value, or the referral partners that are going to do that. And by the way, this applies also to your team members. You have in your business colleagues that are delivering a huge amount of value, and you have probably colleagues who are delivering less value. So where do you want to spend your time? Where do you want to consume your time to get the most out of people? Obviously, with the high-performing team members. And here's an interesting idea. Everyone here will go home later, or maybe you're already home, but you also do fun stuff in your life. And fun stuff, whatever that means to you, travel, exercise, writing, that makes you feel good. It makes you feel happy. It fulfills you. It rewards you. And some of the stuff we do at work, not all of it, but some of the stuff doesn't make us feel happy. So if in our lives we can shift how we spend time away from the unhappy stuff to the happy stuff, we're simply put going to be happier, more fulfilled, more rewarded, more energized, nicer to be around, a better colleague, a better provider, etc. So think about what that 80-20 split is in your world. Now, from time to time, we will feel stress. This is natural, right? Every animal in the animal kingdom feels stress at some point, and it's important we distinguish between what we might call the good stress, because sometimes if stress is short-term, like remember I said, can you do this contract? I really need it in an hour. That could be quite stressful. There's lots to do, right? But that might be a source of good stress because it motivates you, it gets you focused, and you perform really well in that situation. But there's also the situation of prolonged stress. This is unproductive stress. You get worn out, you're anxious, you're confused, and you don't concentrate well, and you're not nice to be around with your clients, your colleagues, and so on, and you just don't perform at good levels. So it's important to distinguish that. Here are some questions. By the way, does anyone feel stressed from time to time? Is that part of life? You can admit it if you like. You don't have to. That's your decision. But here are some questions that you might ask about stress. One idea is to stand back and try to look at yourself and say, do I feel stressed? How stressed? How am I demonstrating that stress? And how does it make me behave differently? What behaviors do I do with my clients, with my colleagues, with myself? How do I deal with the stress? It's good to try and zoom out of your body and look back at yourself and to form an opinion on how this works. And then ask yourself this, has it changed? Is it always like this? When you started your career, 1 year later, 5 years later, 10 years later, last week, last month, at the time you were doing that big deal with that demanding client, at the time you were hiring someone or moving office or dealing with personal situations, what's changed in the way you feel that stress? And can you identify the triggers? It might be when one of your colleagues walks into your office. That could be the trigger. It could be a certain client. It could be a business situation. It could be travel. It could be something quite unique to you. And why are you stressing anyway? Do those things really matter? Ask yourself the question, if I didn't worry about this particular client, what would happen? What would happen if this client left? Does it even matter what I'm worried about? I worry about this person or the quality of the work. What does it matter? Because sometimes we're worried about things which are not that consequential. Is it the things you don't understand that are stressing you? Like, I don't know what my client is thinking about me or the environment in which I'm working. I just don't understand it. I don't understand how to build my business. I don't understand what my boss wants. I just don't understand it. Is that the thing that's worrying you? Is there anything positive coming out of the stress? It may be that some of the stress is the good stress. And then there's also the bad stress, the prolonged stress. Do you see anything useful coming out of it? And to what extent does this come from interaction with others? Because often stress is linked to relationships with other people. It could be personal and it could be in business. So how are you interacting with them and how does that trigger stress? And what do you do about it now? Does it work? I'll give you some ideas in a second, but is there a way you deal with it? And maybe if you make those things a habit, you might even avoid the stress in the first place. If you love going on YouTube and watching silly videos for 20 minutes and that overcomes your stress, maybe you should do that before you feel stressed to avoid the onset of that stress, right? That's the idea there. Now, we've done a lot of work in this area. I'm not going to go through all of this, but some people, and this is coming from accountants and lawyers, mostly based in the US, dealing with their stressful situations, right? The way they breathe. This is coming directly from some clients of ours and so on. One of them said, looking at objects far away when they start to feel stressed, because being aware of things in peripheral vision, but also looking at things can help to collect their thoughts in their brain and so on. This person talked about not thinking about this and then realizing that they grind their teeth a lot during their workday and also at night. Someone felt that they were getting no exercise and they bought this treadmill and they said it's great, but they're still trying to do some exercise outside as well. And this person puts post-it notes on their screen because they need a reminder to go out for a walk every so often, because the breaking the monotony of your day and getting some exercise and so on. So these are some ideas. I'm not saying this will work for everyone, but everyone should develop their own ways to deal with stress. And that brings us to the final point. Thank you for your patience, by the way, and we'll open up for some questions and ideas and thoughts after this. But I want to leave you with this idea, the mindset on this particular topic. You know, let me ask you this. If you get better at managing your time and you start to do some of the things we talked about today, maybe you have other ideas on how you can manage your time better, then the result should be that we actually get back some time, not simply add more to the list, right? The idea is not to get much more efficient and so we can just jam more stuff into our day. What's the point of that, right? Where's the win? How does that make us win in our work, right? If in fact we could get so efficient, and we have so much that we do. We do all of the things I've talked about, but we end up burned out. We feel that we don't have the freedom to enjoy the results of our work. We lose motivation. We don't want to grow our business because we're thinking growth. Why would I grow? That just means more work. I don't want to do that. And if I grow, I get more work, and I've got to do it. And I've just got to jam it in to my work. And particularly for owners of firms, I see this a lot. They actually become unmotivated about doing more because it's just more stuff they've got to do. So this should not be the objective. I don't want to tell you today, let's get so efficient so you can just cram more into your day. It doesn't make sense, right? I think the way we should look at it, and this is the conclusion on the mindset shift idea, is to focus away from efficiency. In other words, how effectively do I do the work? Let's focus less on that and focus more on effectiveness, knowing which work I should be doing, right? Let's make that the focus, okay? Now, in some of your businesses, that might mean strategic work, planning work. You're here doing some kind of professional development, learning methodologies, right? It could be internal management. It could be dealing with a particular client. It could be building a system in your business to make things more efficient. It may be hiring or recruitment or delegation. What are those things in your business that will make you more effective? That's where we should focus our energy, and not only on how do I get more done in less time, because we will just get more done in less time, but we won't be happier or more fulfilled or more rewarded. By the way, if anyone wants to chat with me, that's the overview of what we've discussed today. There's my details, but I will stop sharing the screen now, and I look forward to hearing your comments and your ideas and any questions and any thoughts on some of those ideas we've talked about. Don't make me pick on someone to ask a question. I know this group is usually very lively, and I expect not just your questions, but your ideas. Did we miss anything? Is there another way we can make ourselves more productive or have more fun and be more energized in our work? Thoughts, ideas. Charlie said that she would also be picking on someone if
I've just come off mute for that very reason.
very
If
reason.
somebody doesn't say something.
To try to avoid being picked on, I'll go first.
Thank you, Matthew.
I'm sorry, I'll agree for that. But one thing I find is that no matter how well I try to prioritize a task, when I get sort of new emails coming in or trying to respond to new things, or the phone rings, and it's hard to sort of avoid the phone if it's ringing there. So, it's nice to obviously be great, and I'm sure I'd be more efficient if I was able to stratify my tasks for my day. But it's difficult when you're always sort of having to respond to either new instructions or the other side coming back earlier than you were expecting on a particular piece of work. So I imagine it's probably a sentiment most of us on the call have to deal with. But there's lots of interesting things there to think through. And I definitely recognize I think it was Parkinson's law about how you need to, if you don't have a clear deadline, you're more efficient when you're busy, basically, I think is how I feel about it.
Yeah. Good points, Matthew. Thank you very much. And, I decided before this presentation not to drill into the email side. Maybe I should have, because I imagine a lot of us spend a lot of time on that. I've got clients that do set rules for emails. Like I get into work at 8 o'clock, and from 8:30 to 9, I do email, and then I do email again at 4:30 to 5 before I leave. I mean, that's a simple kind of idea. And we're therefore setting time aside. And, you have to ask yourself when the counterpart on your deal comes back suddenly at 10 o'clock, yeah, but they'll be waiting. And we have to ask ourselves, yes, does it matter? In some cases, maybe it does. I mean, there are things which are highly time sensitive. I appreciate that. But that's the exception. The rule is that most things can wait until those periods. We get lazy in our businesses. Maybe this is the subject of a future conversation, Charlie, just email itself. But we get lazy and we tend to copy lots of people on emails. I don't know if that happens in your businesses. We copy people unnecessarily. We also raise things which can be raised elsewhere. And there's a whole lot of email practices which we can get into, which help us there. But I think, Matthew, what you say, setting time aside for certain things and saying, that's not what I'm doing now. I'm doing something different now. And so I'm going to allow myself to focus intensely on that. I'd love to hear some other ideas on that topic or any related.
Darwin's raised his hand, Mark.
Yes,
Darwin.
Darwin.
Yes. Hi, Doug. Good morning, I guess, for you. It's a little bit before 1 p.m. for us in the States or on the East Coast. So my name is Darwin Beauvais, and I'm a practicing lawyer, billable hours, right? And I do use the calendar blockage method, and one of as you're going over the other methods or what or how we derive on and settle on our certain time management strategies. I think you may have left one out because I actually have not just my assistant but my paralegal. They have access to my calendars and they try to help me stay on task. But I do get a little bit stern with them if something's missed on my calendar because I've made them responsible for it, and I was hoping you can comment on that.
Great idea, Darwin, and good question. And the other topic we didn't cover today was loosely called delegation, right? And this starts with the ability to say, I am doing some kind of task which someone else can do at least as productively as me, which will allow me, it will free me up to focus on other things. Now, there's a lot of complexity, particularly in professional services here, because some of you are thinking that, oh yeah, but no one really does this as well as I do. I've been doing this for 10 years. I've been doing this for 15 years, and I'm really, really good at it. And when it comes to it could be the development of a drafting of a contract or whatever it is, no one else quite does it as well as me. And also, I like it done in a particular way, right? It's always been done this way, and I don't like the way other people do it. And so this is a major obstacle to delegation in professional services. There's also the idea that, I could sit here and teach you how to do it, Darwin. I could spend the next 10 minutes showing you, but in that time, I could just do it myself. So why don't I just do it myself, right? And not spend the time. Now, the trouble is, and it's a really good question you asked, Darwin, because it speaks to that final slide that I put up, is in the long term, and if we are smart in how we run our businesses, we should be looking for ways to save ourselves time 1 week from now, 1 month from now, 1 year from now, and creating capabilities in our business. But that takes some effort today. It takes some effort and energy today, which is the energy we put into training someone else. So I am always urging people to think long term. We talk about in Panalitix taking a balance sheet view of your business, not a profit and loss view. A profit and loss view is if I just get out and bill and bill and bill and get lots of hours on the clock, I'll make a lot more money this month and I'll be really profitable. A balance sheet view says if I go to my colleague and I take the time to teach them how to do something that I like, in a way that I like it, I'm actually creating an asset in my business. I'm creating capability that I can yield. I will get a yield from that asset for many months or years to come. That is a better business decision, right? But it's difficult because we get caught up in the short-term needs of our business. Here's another thing that you might think about is I feel in professional services, we have an obligation to try and educate and train other people to get better. And I ask you, you know, some of those things that you think you are very, very good at, I'm sure you're very, very good at certain things which other people can't do in your office. But why is that? Why? Is it because you went to university and you listened very carefully in the lectures and you took notes and you studied for the exams and you became a lawyer or an accountant and now you're good at stuff? Probably not. You know why you're good at stuff? It's
Because
because,
God made it so?
well, maybe
I'm
if
sorry. I thought I was muted. I'm sorry.
you're right, Darwin. There could be some third-party influence in this, but more likely, when you were a young practitioner, your boss came into your office and said, "Hey, listen, I've got to go. I'm out of town for a month, and someone needs to take over this case, and I'm dropping you in the deep end." And you had to sink or swim. And in that month, you learned more than you learned in the entire 5 years of university or whatever. I'm emphasizing the point for the sake of it, right? But we learn by doing. We learn by being in a stressful situation, in a risky situation. That's where we learn. So, and I think you should think about how you educate your team members in that regard. I think Michael has raised his hand.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, Michael, go ahead.
Excellent. This is a point which I think you were just sort of touching on there, because I've recently joined the firm I'm at now to head up our corporate tax department, and I mean there are issues in the department as there always are, and so what I'm thinking is how these sorts of ideas can be extended, you know, both in time and sort of across teams, because what we need to do is think, well, I've got a bunch of people here and we're always scrambling at the last minute and it's always a panic, and in fact that's what's happening around me right now, to get to the deadlines. How do we fix it so that we can look ahead over a year and say, right, where's the busy times and how can we move that, and how can we get the right people doing the right work? So is that an adaptation of a lot of these ideas in the same way, or do you have to look at them differently?
Really good question, Michael. And what you're talking about is what we'd call organizational structure or organizational design. What we find in professional services is that everyone has learned some really sophisticated skills, and we get to work every day and try to apply those skills, our technical skills, right? We work as technicians. And what we learn is that if you have lots of technicians doing stuff in business, you are going to be less productive because we need management and leadership. So the ideas, Michael, which might help you there when we talk about management and leadership in your tax department, right, are things like capacity planning. Exactly as you said, right? It's what is ahead of me in the next, let's say, year. And the great news in an accounting business with compliance deadlines is we can start to map out. We've got 1,000 clients or 100 clients or whatever it is, and they tend to be partnerships and businesses, and some are international, some own real estate, some have different kinds of income, some have different filing obligations, etc. We can map out the scope of work that's ahead. And then on the other side, we have resources, we have people. Some of them are in your office, some of them are external, they're outsourced, they're contractors, etc. And the job of a manager or a leader is to capacity plan. How am I going to use my time with my team and match their skill sets with the job at hand? I'm not saying it's easy, but I am saying that if someone dedicates their time to doing that, then we will get more productivity out of the team. Then we take the work to the team and we sell it to them. We say, this is the job that's been allocated to you. And some people will say, well, yeah, I've never done that before. I don't know how to do it, which is where a manager kicks in and says, well, we need some training, or we need some motivation, or we need some kind of structure for this. And then we start doing the work, and we need to communicate about the work, because not everything will go to plan. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that your busy lives are all predictable. Of course they're not. Things will not go to plan. So that's when a manager steps in and says, in our daily meeting or our weekly meeting, we've got to address this problem that has arisen. And the manager thinks about the systems, the technology, the processes, the methodologies, the quality control systems that are in place, and they implement those. Now, here's the problem. If I look at productivity numbers, and productivity is defined by how many working hours you have in a day, right? We divide into that how many hours you're billing, right? You're generating revenue for the firm. We like to see in our firms, we like to see managers with relatively low productivity, 45%, 50%, 55%. Why? Because we place more value on them doing the things I've just discussed: planning, capacity planning, internal communication, systems, methodologies, and so on. This is not popular in a lot of professional services firms who will say, what? So you mean I shouldn't bill as much? And the problem there is people don't understand the value of that managerial work, which is exactly what you're asking about, Michael. There's another piece to this, which is client management. Something that can get neglected in a firm is how we interact with our clients, and that is something where we would prefer to see lower productivity with people who are good at interacting with clients, because we greatly value that in professional services firms. Some of you, I don't know you on this call, so I cannot speak for your business, but I would absolutely guarantee that many of you have clients that are underserved. They're underserved. They would buy more from you. They want more of your time. They want more of your expertise and energy, but they cannot get it. You know why? Because you're too busy. You have too much on. You're too busy grinding out lots of work, but you're neglecting a major opportunity in your business, which is to spend a little time with not every client, but those top level clients who are saying, you know what, I would spend much more with you. I have much more to do if you would just give me the time to explain it to you. And so we are neglecting the business development opportunity, which comes from being able to focus on client management, as well as the management, Michael, that you say, which is internal. So if we can shift our energy to that internal management, and this will work, this will depend on each firm. Not every firm, no two firms are the same. I think Robert has a question. Robert from Chicago, welcome. Where are you?
Thanks, I'm here. Hopefully I'm lighting up. Yeah, appreciate this. A lot of it resonates so well with me, and particularly things that are becoming a little bit more foundational the last several years of my practice, kind of would have been helpful 20 years ago had I been instructed on these. But the accountability is great, and the reminder and bringing us back to these things like when to do what kind of work and the rhythms in our day, and getting into flow state. Another thing that maybe has worked for us, and I imagine in your work with your clients, it's something that you discuss the pros and cons for each firm, but with some of our work, we've shifted. We do a lot of flat fee work. We're moving towards more flat fee as opposed to billable hours, because we found, at least I found with some of my staff, doing things that they do very well and hyper efficiently, and we weren't really capturing that in a billable hour, and saying, okay, the clients actually got excited about the fact that, oh, you promised that if it doesn't go outside these bounds, you'll charge us this much. Meanwhile, we're making more profit because we're not tying ourselves to a billable hour.
Great comment, Robert. What kind of business do you have? Are you, what services?
It's a law firm, and we focus on transactional real estate, estates, corporate law, and some litigation. Obviously, you can't do that with a lot of litigation, but there are even some courtroom matters that are very defined. And if we know what those limits are, we set out in advance, we would do this scope of services. Yeah. And clients are very happy to know that there's a kind of a ceiling.
I love that comment, Robert. Thank you so much for that. And you're correct that a lot of the work we do is persuading practitioners to move to a fixed fee model, right? Now, this terrifies a lot of practitioners because they're used to not defining the scope of work very successfully up front. A client comes in and says, yeah, this is kind of what I need. And if we have an hourly rates model, we say, well, yeah, we'll figure it out as we go along. We're not 100% sure of about what they need. And I appreciate that there's some work like litigation, which can take angles and turns which we cannot predict. But there is a lot of work in professional services which is more predictable, and we want to define a scope as far as possible. We want to suggest a fixed fee to our client, which, by the way, your clients much prefer as well. They're less comfortable with the, yeah, you'll bill me at the end of the month, than they are with a fixed fee. But what this also does internally is it sends a message to your teams, which is, look, this is exactly what we've sold. We have systems for this. We've done it before. It's process driven to some extent, and we need to get this work done in a certain time. We have a budgeted hours for this. And we can also offer incentive plans here for our team. Imagine if your team, think about this for a second. Think about this. Think of all of your colleagues. Imagine if they were all saying, I am motivated to get my work done as quickly and as accurately as possible. That's what I want to do in my day job, because I'm incentivized to do that. Versus I'm going to do my job at the pace I want to, and I'm going to bill for it at the end of the month. Is that good for your clients? That's not the best way for your clients. The best way for your clients is your team saying, I'm going to do this work as quickly and efficiently as I possibly can, because that's good for the clients. And if you have to incentivize them to do that, hopefully they would see that themselves. And the fixed price billing model is a very good pathway to getting people excited by doing their work efficiently. So that's a great comment. Other questions, ideas, thoughts? Otherwise, we can start wrapping up. But if there's any, don't go off the call and say, you know, I wish I'd asked that question. It was on the tip of my tongue. Don't be that person who then thinks. You can always send me a note later if that helps you. Easy to reach.
I can see Rachel smiling at that question.
I think Rachel has something on her mind.
No.
She's just,
Kenny does. He's raised his hand, Mark.
Kenny, let's hear from you. There you are. Kenny is relocating to the microphone. The microphone's in a different room.
Probably. While we're waiting for Kenny, I was fascinated by the lark and the owl and the third bird. I'd never heard of that. I am very much a third bird. I will forever take that name with me forward. I'm not a lark by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm glad I now have a title for who I am. So thank you for that, Mark. Kenny, are you with us?
I'm here, yes. I'm sorry, the microphone on my system isn't working. Now,
No
thank you.
worries.
Thank you for very good presentation. I have a question about the mindset shift from efficiency, that is doing the work, and the effectiveness. A lot of times the owner of the business, like the managing partner of an accounting firm, you know, plans his time, his schedule, everything is on schedule. But there are some clients that want only to deal with him alone and not any other person. You know, since professional services, it's based on the person, the owner of the business, that they know as much as I know, because someone knows you and he believes in what you are doing. He believes in the quality of your work and they want to deal with you. And because they know you and they want to deal with you alone, how do you marry the fact that some of these clients, sometimes they don't book, they just call you and say, and you know, eat into your time. How do you cope with this? And they don't have to deal with someone else within the firm. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. And I fully acknowledge that this situation exists, right? So the first question I would ask that owner you talk about is, what business do you want to build here? Do you want to build a business that can scale, can grow, and is less dependent on one individual or a couple of individuals, right? Which will enable you to have more free time and focus on other things? Or do you want to build a business which has high dependence on you, where many people view you as the main asset in the business, which will restrict your ability to grow and will make everything in the business highly dependent on you? Now, it's not a trick question. And there are some people who would say, frankly, I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable having my 10 clients who love me, and if they call me on the weekend or they call me any time of the day, I'll just deal with it. And you know, early in your career, that may be a satisfactory outcome. But what we increasingly find is practitioners are less tolerant of that, and they want to build something that is scalable. So how do we go about that for those people? Well, we have to undo the bad habits that have set in the early days. Habits like, listen, if you ever want to chat, just give me a call. Here's my cell number. We don't do that anymore. We define roles in our firms. If you want to talk about administration or a technical matter or a tax matter, you call this person. If you want to talk about a business matter, you call this person. We set the rules with clients. We make the relationship more equal and rules driven. This, in any other industry, by the way, is not unusual. I mean, when we fly on United Airlines or British Airways or wherever, we don't get to choose which pilot is going to fly us. It's unthinkable, right? We don't get to choose the pathway that the plane is going to take. We don't even get to choose what the meal is going to be on that plane, even in business class. Right? We don't, that's just not the rules. So why should your clients have unrestricted access to you any time of day, all the time, on any subject? But it's not their fault. If you invite them to do that, they will. We would take that opportunity, right? If suddenly your airline said, hey, do you want to choose your food? You would say, yeah, I will. Actually, now that I can, I will. You would take the opportunity. So we have to set the rules. But it comes from desire, honestly. It comes from desire. It comes from asking yourself the question, what business do I want to build here? And if it's one that needs to scale and grow with low dependence on the owner, then you have to do the things I'm saying. If you don't want to do that, you have a choice, which is to be at your client's whim and fancy at any point in time. I hope I've covered that. That was Kenny's question. We have a whole lot of methodologies on that, Kenny, if you would like to get into more detail on all of these topics. We have a ton more information that I'm happy to share with anyone who's interested. Any other questions or ideas, or should we start wrapping up? I have time.
I will send your details out, Mark, to everybody on an email that I'll send across to everyone tomorrow. I'll have the recording on as well. But if you do want to contact Mark, you'll be very welcome to do so. He would be very grateful if you did contact him. He, as you can see, very much enjoys talking about this stuff and knows what he's talking about. So you're very welcome to pick his brains at any time. But was there any last questions for Mark at all? Just a few people saying thank you. No. I think we're probably there then, Mark.
I think we're done, and thank you everyone for taking your valuable time to be here. Appreciate that, and would love to continue the discussion. See some of you in Berlin if you're there. I'll be there, so look forward to that.